Welcome back. Remember to subscribe. Enjoy your story.
I hope you're proud of yourself. Shame on you both.
Tasha, look, I can explain.
You slept with my sister. No, don't even try to lie. The words didn't come out loud. Not at first. They sat in Tasha's throat. Heavy, sharp. Like if she let them out too quickly, everything would shatter all at once. Her fingers tightened slightly around her phone. Her chest rose, then fell, slow, controlled. Will stood across from her, adjusting his cuff like this was just another ordinary moment. Like she hadn't just seen something that changed everything. Tasha, what are you talking about? He said, calm, too calm. She let out a small breath, not a laugh, not quite anger, just disbelief. What am I talking about? She repeated softly. A pause, her eyes locked on his, not blinking, not searching, just knowing. You really thought I wouldn't find out. There it was. That shift, that tiny flicker in his face, gone in a second, but she saw it, and that was enough. Her grip on the phone loosened slightly as she took one step forward. Not rushed, not aggressive, measured, out of all the women, Will's. Her voice dropped, almost breaking, but she held it together, barely. You chose my sister? Silence, the kind that fills a room so completely it almost feels loud. He looked at her, then away, then back again, trying to calculate, trying to recover, but this time there was nothing to fix. Tasha tilted her head slightly, studying him like she was seeing him for the first time, and maybe she was. Say something, she whispered. He opened his mouth, closed it, then, it's not what you think. That did it. She let out a quiet breath, shaking her head slowly. Not loud, not dramatic, just enough to carry everything she was feeling in that one small sound. It's exactly what I think. Another step closer. Now there was no distance between them. Because I saw you, Wills. A pause. Her voice softened. But it cut deeper. I saw everything. And just like that, whatever illusion he had been holding on to collapsed. Her eyes didn't water, didn't beg, didn't break. That was the part he wasn't ready for. Because Tasha wasn't reacting the way she used to. No yelling, no crying, no desperate questions. Just clarity. Cold, steady, undeniable clarity. She lifted her phone slightly, not enough to show him, just enough for him to realize. You recorded me? His voice dropped. She didn't answer immediately, just looked at him long enough. Then, 5 minutes. Silence again, but this time, it felt different. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once, like he needed space to think. Tasha, listen. No, she cut in, firm, quiet, controlled. You've talked enough. Another pause, short, heavy. Now you're going to listen. She stepped back slightly, just enough to create distance again, but not enough to disconnect. You didn't just cheat on me, she said, her voice steady. You disrespected me, in my own house, with my own blood. And for the first time, there it was, a crack in his composure. Small, but real. Tasha watched it happen, and, instead of pain, something else settled in her chest. Acceptance. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. She nodded once, almost to herself. Okay. That one word confused him more than anything else. Okay? He repeated. She turned slightly, already walking away. Yeah, she said quietly. Okay. And just like that, the confrontation ended. But the story? No, this was only the beginning. Because what Tasha did next, what she planned, what she executed with a level of calm that no one saw coming, well, that didn't just hurt Wills. It destroyed everything he thought he controlled. And somewhere else, at a celebration meant for joy, a room full of people would sit in silence. watching a truth they could never unsee. Before we go any further, let me ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to realize they were living a completely different life behind your back? If you've ever felt that kind of betrayal, go ahead and like this video. It really helps push stories like this out to more people. And, I'm curious. Drop a comment right now. What would you have done in Tasha's place? And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to Alex Romance and Divorce Stories. Because stories like this, they don't just entertain, they teach you exactly what to watch out for. Now, let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest with yourself for a second. Have you ever looked at someone you loved, someone you built a life with, and realized you never really knew them at all? Not just small lies, not just little secrets. I mean, the kind that makes you stop and think, wait, who have I been living with this whole time? Because that's exactly where Tasha found herself. Not screaming, not breaking things, not even asking questions anymore. Just standing there in the middle of her own living room, trying to process how everything she believed in had just collapsed in a single moment. And the worst part? It wasn't even the cheating. No, it was her sister, her own blood, the same woman she laughed with, defended, trusted around her children. Tasha didn't say it out loud, but the thought hit her hard. So all those times you were smiling at me, you already knew? She swallowed slowly, her throat tight, her chest heavier now, because betrayal from a stranger, that hurts, but betrayal from family, that hits somewhere deeper. And if you've ever been through something like that, then you already understand. This kind of pain doesn't come with loud reactions. It comes with silence, distance, clarity, and right there, in that quiet moment, Tasha made a decision, not out of anger, not out of emotion, but out of something far more dangerous, control. She wasn't going to fight. She wasn't going to beg. She wasn't even going to expose them immediately. No, because Tasha understood something most people don't in moments like this. When people think they've gotten away with something, they relax, they get comfortable, they stop being careful. And that's when you see everything clearly. So, she said nothing, did nothing, showed nothing. And that's exactly why what came next hit even harder, because days later, in a room filled with family, laughter, celebration, Tasha stood up, calm, composed, unbothered on the surface, and what she played in that room destroyed everyone. No one was ready, not her mother, not the guests, not even Will's, and definitely not Oma. Because some secrets, they don't just embarrass you, they expose you completely, and in that moment, there was nowhere to hide. Now, here's the real question. And I need you to really think about this one. If you were in Tasha's position, and you had proof, clear, undeniable proof of betrayal, would you confront them immediately, or would you stay quiet? Wait, and choose the perfect moment to make sure the truth hits exactly where it hurts the most. Take a second, because your answer says a lot about you, and trust me, by the time this story ends, you might just change your mind. Because to understand why Tasha handled it the way she did, you have to understand who she was, what she had already endured, and the kind of man Wills had become over time. This didn't start overnight. No, this was something that had been building quietly, right in front of her. For years, Atlanta raised Tasha in a way that didn't leave room for illusions. Not the soft kind. Not the kind where love always works out just because you give it your all. She lived on the quieter side of the city, tree-lined streets, familiar faces, neighbors who knew just enough about each other to stay connected, but not involved. A place where family mattered, where Sunday afternoons meant food, laughter, and someone always asking about the kids. And Tasha? She was the one everyone depended on. Not because she was loud, not because she demanded attention, but because she showed up every time. Her life revolved around structure. Work during the day, picking up the kids, checking homework, making sure dinner was ready. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. And those two little ones, they were everything to her. The only place where her love felt safe, where it didn't come back broken. Because if there was one thing Tasha had learned early, it was that love, the kind you give fully, doesn't always get returned the same way. Her past relationships had already taught her that. Promises that faded, effort that slowly disappeared, men who started strong, then changed. So when Wills came into her life back then, confident, charming, different from what she was used to, she didn't fall fast. She watched, waited, measured, even when things became serious, even when they built a home together, even after the kids came. There was always a part of her that stayed guarded, not cold, not distant, just aware, because Tasha didn't believe in fairy tales. She believed in patterns, and slowly, over time, she started seeing one form again, the same shift, the same distance, the same feeling of being less important, but this time, it was harder, because she wasn't just protecting her heart anymore. She was protecting her children, her home, her peace, and still, she stayed, tried, adjusted, because that's who she was. A woman who didn't walk away easily. But once she did, there was no coming back. New York shaped Wills differently. Faster, sharper, less patient. His world moved at a pace where hesitation looked like weakness, where success wasn't optional, it was expected. And he didn't just meet that expectation, he dominated it. Boardrooms, meetings, deals that shifted numbers most people couldn't even comprehend. He was used to being in control, used to people listening when he spoke. Used to getting what he wanted without resistance. And that mindset, it didn't stay at work. It followed him everywhere, especially into his personal life. Because, to Wills, relationships weren't about connection. They were about access, comfort, control. He loved the idea of having a family, a beautiful home, children who carried his name. But the deeper parts, the emotional effort, the consistency, that wasn't where he invested his energy. Instead, he fed his ego. Attention from women came easily, too easily, and, over time, he stopped seeing it as something to respect. He started seeing it as something he deserved, something he could collect. And at the center of all that confidence, all that arrogance, there was one thing he held on to more than anything else. His manhood, not just physically, but mentally. It became his proof. The reason he believed women stayed interested, the reason he thought he could never truly lose. He didn't always say it out loud, but in conversations, in jokes, in the way he carried himself. It was there, that quiet pride. Some things just speak for themselves, he once said casually to a colleague, a slight smirk on his face. And moments like that, they built something in him, a belief that no matter what he did, no matter who he hurt, he would always be wanted. And that belief was exactly what led him to the point where he stopped fearing consequences entirely. By the time everything started falling apart, it didn't look broken from the outside. The house was still standing, the kids were still laughing, dinner still got made, but inside that marriage, something had already shifted. Tasha loved with intention, not loudly, not for show, but in the way she remembered things, the way she checked in, the way she stayed present, even when she was tired. Did you eat? She'd ask him some nights, setting his plate down. Wills would nod, barely looking up from his phone. Yeah, I'm good. That was it. No eye contact, no follow-up. And at first, she told herself it was normal. He was busy, work was demanding, life gets like that sometimes. But over time, it stopped feeling like distance and started feeling like disinterest. Because Tasha wasn't just asking about food. She was asking, "Are you still here with me?" And Wills? He wasn't, not really. He was present physically, but emotionally, somewhere else, always somewhere else. And the more she tried to close that gap, the more he pulled away without even realizing it. "You've changed," she told him once. Standing near the kitchen doorway, he sighed, already irritated. "No, I haven't. You're just overthinking." She paused, looked at him carefully. "I'm not overthinking. I'm paying attention." That landed, but not enough to change anything. Because in Will's mind, there wasn't a problem big enough to fix. He still came home, still provided, still played his role when it was convenient. So, to him, that was enough. But to Tasha, it wasn't about what he did. It was about what he withheld. The effort, the attention, the presence, and, slowly, she stopped expecting it. Not dramatically, not all at once, just less talking, less asking, less reaching, until one day, she realized she was no longer trying to fix anything. And that was the beginning of the end. If there was one thing Wills never doubted about himself, it was that he could always keep a woman interested, not because of love, not because of emotional connection, but because of what he believed he had over every other man. His manhood, it wasn't just confidence. It was something he carried like proof, like evidence that no matter what happened, he would always have an advantage. And the way he moved, the way he spoke, even the way he looked at women sometimes, it reflected that belief. He didn't need to say much, didn't need to chase too hard, because, in his mind, the outcome was already decided. There were moments, subtle ones, where it showed clearly. A conversation with friends, a passing joke, a quiet comment that lingered just long enough. "Some things just don't need explanation," he said once, leaning back, relaxed. Confident, the others laughed. But he wasn't joking. That was the difference. To Wills, his manhood wasn't just physical, it was power, control, leverage, and over time, he started using it that way. Not just in relationships, but in how he valued himself. Women responded to him, reacted to him, stayed around him, and instead of questioning why, he convinced himself it was because of that one thing. So he leaned into it, trusted it, relied on it, until it became the only thing he truly believed made him irreplaceable. "You worry too much," he told Tasha once, brushing her concern off like it didn't matter. "I know what I'm doing." She looked at him for a second longer than usual, like she was about to say something deeper, something real. But instead, she just nodded, and in that quiet moment, without him realizing it, she stopped trying to reach him completely. Because you can't compete with something a man worships more than the relationship itself. It didn't happen all at once. That's what made it harder to fight. The first time, Tasha didn't even go looking for it. It was small, a message that stayed on his phone just a second too long, a name she didn't recognize, a tone that felt off. She wasn't the type to go through phones, never had been, but something about the way he moved that night, too careful, too casual, it made her pause. "Who's that?" she asked lightly, leaning against the counter. Wills didn't flinch. "Work? Quick, simple, dismissive." She nodded slowly, but her eyes stayed on him a second longer than usual, because something in her didn't settle. That night, while he showered, she picked up his phone, not out of habit, not out of insecurity, just instinct. And what she saw? Enough, not everything, but enough to confirm what she didn't want to believe. Messages that crossed a line, words that didn't belong to a married man. Her chest tightened, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. When he came out, towel around his shoulders, relaxed like nothing had changed. "Wills," she said, her voice steady. "Who is she?" He froze for half a second, then recovered. "What are you talking about?" She held the phone up, not shaking, not aggressive, just certain. "Don't do that," she said softly. "Don't lie to me." He stared at the screen, then at her, then sighed. "It's nothing serious." That word, nothing. It landed harder than anything else. "Nothing?" she repeated slowly. A pause. Her fingers tightened slightly around the phone. You're texting another woman, late at night. And it's nothing? He rubbed his face, already frustrated. Tasha, you're blowing this out of proportion. There it was, the shift, from being caught to making her feel like the problem. She looked at him for a long moment. No, she said quietly. I'm finally seeing it clearly. Silence. That was the first time, not the last, because after that, the pattern didn't stop. It just changed form. Different names, different situations, same energy, late nights, excuses, distance, and every time she brought it up, it's work. You're overthinking. It's not what it looks like. The same lines over and over again, until one night. She didn't argue, didn't question, didn't even raise her voice. She just looked at him and said something that lingered longer than any fight they had ever had. You're going to lose me one day, Wills. He laughed it off, actually laughed. You're not going anywhere. That was his mistake, because he believed that, completely, the arguments didn't explode. They wore her down instead. Short conversations that turned into tension. Simple questions that led nowhere. Why do you keep doing this? She asked one night, sitting at the edge of the bed. Wills didn't even look up, scrolling, detached. Doing what? She let out a slow breath. You know exactly what I mean. A pause. He finally glanced at her. Tasha, I'm tired. I don't have the energy for this right now. That response. It did something to her. Not anger, not sadness. Something quieter, like a door slowly closing. You never do, she said. He sighed again, irritation creeping in. Because it's always the same thing with you. She blinked. The same thing? He sat up now, finally engaging, but not in the way she needed. Yeah, accusations, doubt, drama. Her expression changed slightly. Not dramatic, just sharper. So I'm the problem now? He shook his head. I didn't say that. She leaned back slightly, studying him. You didn't have to. Silence filled the space between them again. But this time, it felt heavier, because she realized something in that moment. He wasn't going to change, not because he couldn't, but because he didn't see a reason to. And that understanding, it drained something out of her. Not all at once, just piece by piece, until even the arguments started to feel pointless. She stopped asking as many questions, stopped checking, stopped reacting the way she used to. And Wills? He noticed the silence, but instead of questioning it, he relaxed into it, because to him, no complaints meant no problems. See? He said casually one evening, grabbing his keys. Things are better when you're not overthinking everything. She looked at him, really looked at him, and for a second, it almost felt like she was about to say something honest, something final, but instead, she just nodded. Yeah, maybe. And that quiet response, that was the moment everything truly shifted. Because Tasha wasn't fighting for the relationship anymore, she was observing it. And once a woman starts observing instead of reacting, the outcome is already decided. After a while, Wills stopped getting caught the same way. Not because he stopped, no, because he learned. The first few times had been sloppy, predictable, too easy to trace. But Wills was a man who adapted quickly. That's what made him successful in business. And now, he applied that same mindset to something else. He changed patterns, different phones, different timings, more controlled conversations. He stopped leaving traces, stopped making obvious mistakes. Even his behavior at home shifted slightly, more present, more attentive, just enough to lower suspicion. You've been different, Tasha said one evening, watching him carefully. He smiled lightly. Isn't that what you wanted? She didn't respond immediately, because yes, he was different, but not in the way that felt real. It felt rehearsed, measured, like someone following a script they had already perfected. And that unsettled her more than the arguments ever did, because now there was no evidence, just instinct. And instinct doesn't come with proof. It comes with tension. Late nights still happened, but now they had explanations, meetings, flights, unexpected changes. Everything sounded reasonable, too reasonable. "You're working a lot again," she said one morning, folding laundry. "That's how I maintain this life," he replied smoothly, adjusting his watch. She nodded slowly. Right. That word carried more than he realized, because Tasha wasn't convinced, but she also wasn't chasing answers anymore. She had already seen enough before, felt enough before, and now she was watching him in a different way, not as a wife trying to hold on, but as someone trying to understand how far he would go. And Wills? He mistook that silence for peace, for acceptance, which made him even more comfortable, and comfort made him bolder. At some point, it stopped being about temptation. It became routine, not something Wills struggled with, not something he even thought twice about anymore. Just part of his lifestyle, different cities, different faces, different moments that blurred together over time, and each time, the same pattern. Attention, validation, ego fed, then he'd return home, as if nothing had happened, because in his mind, nothing had changed. He still had his family, still had his home, still had control, and, most importantly, he still believed Tasha wasn't going anywhere. That belief made him careless in a different way, not sloppy, but arrogant, because when a man thinks there are no consequences, he stops respecting limits. There were moments, small ones, where it almost showed. A look, a tone, a kind of confidence that didn't belong in a committed marriage. "You worry too much," he told her again one night. Brushing past her toward the door, she didn't respond right away, just watched him. "Do the first?" she said quietly. He paused, just slightly, then shook his head. "Yeah, you do." He left, and the door closed behind him with a soft click. Tasha stood there for a moment longer than usual, her arms folded loosely, her expression unreadable, because deep down, she already knew, not just what he was doing, but who he had become, and more importantly, what she was going to do about it. "Let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. If you were in Tasha's position right now, seeing the signs, feeling the distance, knowing something isn't right, would you stay, or would you walk away?" Drop your answer in the comments. I really want to see where you stand on this. And if this story is hitting a little too close to home, don't forget to like the video. It helps more people see it. And trust me, someone out there needs this message. Because what happens next, it changes everything. Houston felt different from Atlanta. Louder, warmer, more expressive. Tasha noticed it the moment she stepped into her sister's space that weekend. Music played low in the background. Voices layered over each other. Laughter came easy in that room. Omar always had that kind of energy around her. People gravitated toward her, not because she was soft, but because she was bold. Where Tasha was measured, Omar was direct. "Finally," Omar said, walking over with a wide smile, pulling Tasha into a quick hug. "You took forever." Tasha smiled faintly. "Traffic." "Excuses," Omar teased, stepping back, looking her up and down. "You look good, though." Tasha adjusted her sleeve slightly. "Thanks." The room was filled with women, some familiar, some not, drinks in hand, comfortable, open. It didn't take long before conversations shifted from casual to personal, careers, relationships, marriage, and eventually, men. Tasha stayed quiet at first, listening, observing. That was her nature. But Omar? She was already in the middle of it. "No, I'm serious," Omar said, laughing lightly, leaning forward. "You can't just be with a man because he has money. That's not enough." A few women nodded. Others smirked. "So, what matters then?" someone asked. Omar didn't answer immediately. Instead, she glanced at Tasha, just for a second, then back at the group. "Everything," she said. "The way he carries himself, the way he makes you feel, the way he—" She stopped, smiled slightly. "Never mind." The room reacted instantly. "No, no, finish that," another woman said, laughing. Omar leaned back, relaxed. "I just think A man should make you feel something real. Her tone was light, but her eyes, still observant, and again, they landed on Tasha, not long, just enough. Enough to notice, enough to question, but Tasha didn't react. She simply took a small sip of her drink and looked away, unaware that something had already started shifting in that room. The conversation didn't stop there. It deepened, naturally, because once the surface topics fade, people start saying what they really think. Okay, let's be honest, one of the women said, crossing her legs. What actually keeps you interested in a man? A few laughs, some hesitation, then answers started coming in. Consistency, respect, communication, safe answers, expected answers. Omar tilted her head slightly. That's nice, she said, almost amused. But that's not the full truth. The room quieted a little. So what is? Someone challenged. Omar shrugged lightly. Chemistry, she said. Real connection. Not just talking, I mean feeling it. Her tone dropped slightly, not inappropriate, but intentional. That shifted the energy, because now, the conversation wasn't just about relationships. It was about intimacy. You mean like physical? Another woman asked. Omar smirked. I mean everything that comes with it. A few glances were exchanged, some laughter, some curiosity, and then someone turned to Tasha. What about you? She asked. You've been quiet. Tasha paused, not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. I don't know, she said slowly. I think it's a mix of things. Like what? Omar asked quickly, too quickly. Tasha looked at her, then away. Connection, she said, feeling secure, feeling like the man knows what he's doing. A small pause. And Omar leaned forward slightly. Tasha hesitated, just for a second. Then, and confidence, she added. Not loud, just sure of himself. Omar's eyes didn't leave her, not once. That's it? She asked softly. Tasha shrugged lightly. That's enough. The room shifted again. Because that answer? It wasn't random. It came from experience. And Omar picked up on that immediately. Not just what she said, but how she said it. The calm, the certainty, the quiet weight behind those words. And, in that moment, curiosity settled in. Not casual curiosity, focused, intent. Because Omar wasn't just hearing her sister speak. She was analyzing her, and more importantly, she was starting to wonder about the man behind those words. The conversation should have ended there. It didn't, because once curiosity enters a room like that, it doesn't leave quietly. One of the women leaned in, smiling a little wider now. Okay, but you're still being careful, she said, pointing lightly at Tasha. You didn't really answer the question. A few soft laughs followed. Tasha exhaled slowly, not annoyed, just aware of where the conversation was heading. I did answer, she said calmly. Omar shook her head slightly. No, she said, her voice softer now, but more focused. You gave the safe version. That landed. Tasha looked at her, really looked at her this time. There was something in Omar's tone, not playful anymore, intentional. A small pause passed between them. Then, Tasha leaned back slightly in her seat. All right, she said quietly. You want the real answer? The room reacted instantly. Yes. Finally, Tasha hesitated just a second, then spoke. I like a man who knows himself, she said. Not guessing, not unsure. Just certain. Her voice stayed steady, measured, and when it comes to intimacy, she added, choosing her words carefully, it matters that he's not lacking. That line shifted the room, subtle, but clear. Some women exchanged glances. Others smiled knowingly. Omar didn't move. Not lacking. How? She asked. Direct. Too direct. Tasha's eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't pull back. You understand what I mean, she said. Omar tilted her head. Say it. A quiet tension formed between them. not loud, but present. Tasha let out a small breath. "I'm not interested in struggling to feel satisfied," she said simply. "A man should come." Complete silence. Then a few low reactions. "Okay, I hear that, but Omar." She didn't react like the others. She stayed still, eyes locked, mind working. Because that answer? It confirmed something, not just about Tasha, but about Will's, and more specifically, his manhood. Tasha didn't say his name, didn't need to. The confidence in her tone said enough. And Omar? She caught every detail. Something changed in Omar after that night. Not visibly, not immediately, but internally. Something locked in. At first, it was just curiosity, a passing thought, a quiet question in her mind. But curiosity doesn't stay small for long, especially when it's fed. And Omar fed it. She started paying closer attention whenever Wills was around. The way he walked into a room, the way people reacted to him, the way he carried himself without needing approval. And, slowly, that curiosity turned into something else. Interest. Then, something deeper. Fixation. Because in her mind, she had already built the idea. Confident, certain, not lacking. Everything Tasha described. And once that image formed, she couldn't ignore it anymore. So, she acted, not aggressively, not obviously, carefully. The first time she approached him differently. It was subtle, a conversation that lingered longer than usual. A compliment that carried just a little more weight. "You know," she said one evening, her tone light but deliberate, "I get why she stays with you." Wills glanced at her, slight smirk. "Oh yeah?" She stepped just a little closer, not enough to cross a line, just enough to shift the space between them. "A man like you," she said, her voice dropping slightly. Yeah, I see why she keeps you." That pause, that tone, it hit exactly where she intended. Because Omar didn't just compliment him. She acknowledged the one thing he valued most, his manhood, without saying it directly. And Wills? He felt it, not just the words, but the meaning behind them. That recognition, that admiration, it pulled him in instantly, because it fed something in him that had been growing for years. Ego. And Omar? She saw the reaction, noticed the shift, and that's when she knew. She had him, not fully, not yet, but enough to take it further. And once she started, she didn't stop, because this wasn't just curiosity anymore. This was pursuit. And Wills? He didn't resist, not even a little. It didn't start with suspicion. That was the strange part. It started with kindness, or at least, what looked like it. Wills came home earlier than usual that Thursday evening. Not rushed, not distracted, calm. Tasha noticed it immediately. "You're back early," she said, glancing up from the kitchen. He loosened his tie slightly, walking in like everything was normal. "Yeah, figured I should slow down a bit." That caught her attention, because that wasn't him, not lately. She wiped her hands slowly, turning to face him fully now. "Slow down," she repeated. He nodded. "You've been doing a lot," he added. "With the kids, the house, everything." A small pause settled between them. Tasha studied him, not suspicious, just processing, because compliments from Wills weren't rare. But timed like this? That felt different. "Okay," she said slowly. He stepped closer, not too close, just enough to feel intentional. "Why don't you take the weekend off?" He suggested, "Go somewhere, relax, no kids, no stress." Tasha blinked. "The weekend?" "Yeah," he said smoothly. "You deserve it." She didn't answer immediately, because while the offer sounded good, something about it didn't settle right. Not wrong, just unexpected. "What about the kids?" she asked. "I'll handle it," he replied quickly. "Or they can stay with your mom. She's been asking anyway." Another pause. Everything he was saying made sense. Too much sense. "You're sure?" she asked. He nodded without hesitation. "Positive." That word lingered, because Wills wasn't usually this. Thoughtful, not without a reason. But Tasha didn't push, didn't question further. She just nodded. All right. And just like that, the plan was set in motion. Friday came quicker than expected. The house felt different that morning. Not tense, not loud, just shifting. Tasha packed the kids' bags carefully. Clothes, snacks, their favorite things, routine, familiar. But her movements were slower than usual, more deliberate, like she was thinking about something she hadn't fully said out loud yet. "Mommy, are you coming with us?" one of the kids asked, standing near the door. Tasha paused, then smiled gently. "Not this time, baby," she said softly. "I'll see you soon." The child nodded, satisfied. Wills stepped in, grabbing the bags. "All right, let's go," he said casually. Tasha watched him, the way he moved, the way he didn't hesitate. Everything looked normal, and yet there was a feeling she couldn't ignore, a quiet pull in her chest. "Call me when you get there," she said. "Of course," he replied, already heading toward the door. No pause, no second look, just movement. The door closed behind them, and the house fell silent. Tasha stood there for a moment, alone, completely alone. She exhaled slowly. It wasn't a reaction. Not exactly. Just a small release of something she couldn't fully name. Because for the first time in a long time, there were no distractions, no kids, no noise, no routine. Just space. And sometimes, space makes you notice things you've been ignoring. The timing lined up too neatly. That was the part Tasha couldn't quite ignore, just as she started getting ready to leave for her own weekend away. Her phone rang. Omar. Tasha glanced at the screen for a second before answering. "Hey," she said, adjusting her bag on her shoulder. "Girl, you won't believe this." Omar's voice came through. Light, casual. Tasha leaned slightly against the wall. "What happened?" "I had a trip planned this weekend. Remember I told you?" Omar said, "Well, work just messed everything up. I can't go anymore." Tasha frowned slightly. "Oh, that's annoying." "Yeah," Omar sighed softly. "I already booked everything too. It's just going to waste now." A small pause. "Unless," Omar added. Tasha's brows pulled together. "Unless what?" "You take it," she said quickly. "You said Wills told you to go relax this weekend, right? Just use my reservation." Tasha blinked. "Wait, seriously?" "Yeah," Omar replied smoothly. "It's already paid for. No point letting it go to waste." Everything paused for a second in Tasha's mind. The timing, the offer, the convenience, all of it, aligned too perfectly. "I mean, I don't know," Tasha said slowly. "Come on," Omar pushed lightly. "You need this. And it's already set. Just go." Tasha hesitated. Her fingers tightened slightly around her phone. "Okay, where is it again?" she asked. Omar answered quickly. "Details ready." Too ready. And that's when something shifted. Not enough to stop her. Not enough to question openly. But enough to sit in the back of her mind. Quiet. Unsettled. "All right," Tasha said finally. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long," Omar replied lightly. "You deserve a break." The call ended. Tasha lowered the phone slowly. Everything made sense. And yet, something about it didn't feel natural. By mid-afternoon, everything was in place. The kids were gone. The house was quiet. Her bag was ready. And the plan? Perfect. Too perfect. Tasha stood near the doorway, keys in hand. She looked around the house. Nothing out of place. Nothing unusual. And still, that feeling stayed. Not fear. Not panic. Just awareness. "It's just a weekend," she said quietly to herself. Simple, normal. But her body didn't fully agree. Because things had been off for a while. Wills acting different. Omar suddenly more involved. And now this. A perfectly timed break. A ready-made trip. A quiet house. It all connected. But not clearly enough to act on. That was the problem. No proof. No direct sign. Just instinct. And instinct can be easy to ignore. When everything else looks right, Tasha picked up her phone again, scrolled briefly, paused, then locked it. "I'm overthinking," she muttered. A soft exhale followed. "Yeah, I am." But even as she said it, she didn't fully believe it, because deep down, there was a part of her already preparing, not emotionally, but mentally, like something was about to happen, and she just didn't know what yet. Tasha didn't make it to the trip. That was the part no one planned for. Work called, unexpected, urgent. She stared at her phone for a second after the call ended, then looked at her packed bag. "I'll just go later," she said quietly. Simple decision. No stress. No overthinking. She picked up her keys again. But this time, not to leave the city, to go back home. The drive felt normal. Traffic steady. Radio low. Nothing out of place. But as she turned into her street, something felt different. Not obvious. Not loud. Just a shift. Her house stood exactly the same. Clean. Still. She parked slowly, sat there for a second, her fingers resting on the steering wheel. Then she exhaled. "It's nothing," she murmured. She stepped out, walked toward the door, unlocked it, and the moment she stepped inside, she stopped. Something was off, not messy, not destroyed, just wrong. The air felt heavier, warmer than it should have been. She closed the door behind her gently, took a few steps forward. Then she saw it, a pair of shoes, not hers, right there near the living room. Tasha's eyes stayed on them for a second, then shifted. A jacket, carelessly dropped, not where it belonged. Her breathing slowed. Not panic, not fear, just confirmation. Because she didn't need to see everything yet. She already knew. Tasha moved forward slowly. Each step measured, not rushed, not hesitant. Controlled. The house was quiet, too quiet, but not empty, because beneath that silence, there was something else, faint, distant, a sound. She paused, tilted her head slightly, listened. There it was again, soft, rhythmic, not words, not conversation, something else. Her chest tightened slightly, but her face, still calm. She stepped closer. The closer she got, the clearer it became. Movement, energy, a presence that didn't belong in secrecy, but was hidden anyway. She passed the hallway, another piece of clothing, then another, scattered, careless, like whoever left them there. Wasn't worried about being seen. That part stung more than anything. Not just the act, but the confidence behind it, the lack of fear. Tasha stopped just before the bedroom door. It wasn't fully closed. Just slightly open. Enough. The sounds were clearer now, undeniable. She didn't push the door, didn't announce herself. She just stood there for a moment, listening. And in that moment, everything connected. The weekend, the trip, Omar's call, all of it. So this is what it was. She whispered, barely audible. Not anger, not shock, just realization. And with that realization, something inside her settled, not broken, settled, like a decision had already been made before she even saw the full picture. Her hand moved slowly toward her phone, not shaking, not unsure, deliberate, because whatever was behind that door, she wasn't going to interrupt it, not yet. Tasha didn't move the door. She didn't need to. The small opening was enough, enough to see, enough to understand, enough to remember. Her fingers unlocked her phone slowly. No rush, no hesitation, just intention. She tapped the camera, switched to video, held it steady, then raised it slightly, and pressed record. 5 minutes. That's all it took. 5 minutes to capture something that would change everything. Inside the room, Wills wasn't the man she had been living with. Not the distant one, not the distracted one. This version of him was present, focused, engaged. His attention wasn't divided, wasn't half-hearted. It was full, and that alone hit her harder than anything else, because she had waited for that version, asked for it, tried to reach it, and now, here it was, just not for her. Omar moved with confidence, not hesitation, not guilt, like she belonged there, like this wasn't new, and her voice, low, certain, carried through the small gap in the door. "I told you," she murmured softly, her tone filled with admiration. "You don't even understand what you have." Tasha's grip on the phone tightened slightly. There it was, that same pattern, validation, praise, feeding the one thing Wills never stopped valuing, his manhood. And Wills, he didn't resist it, didn't question it. He leaned into it, every reaction, every movement, fueled by that same ego, the same belief that had carried him this far without consequence. Tasha's breathing stayed steady, in, out, controlled, because if she lost control now, she would lose the moment. And this moment, it mattered more than they realized. The phone stayed steady in her hand, capturing everything, not for anger, not for reaction, but for truth. And truth doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It wasn't what they were doing, not really. Tasha had already accepted that part before she even opened the door. What hurt was how, the energy, the effort, the attention, Wills wasn't holding back. He wasn't distracted, wasn't distant. He was fully there, responding, leading, present in a way she had never experienced from him. And that realization, it settled deep, because it answered a question she had been asking herself for years. It was never that he couldn't give more, he just didn't give it to her. Her lips parted slightly as she watched. A quiet breath escaped her. "So this is what you save for someone else," she whispered. The words barely left her mouth, but they carried everything. Every moment she had waited, every time she had adjusted, every time she had stayed quiet instead of demanding more. All of it. "And Omar," she continued, unaffected, unaware. "A man like you," she said again, her voice softer now. Yeah. She doesn't even realize what she has. That line, it didn't just sting, it clarified everything. Because in Omar's mind, Tasha wasn't enough, and in Will's actions, he agreed that was the truth. Not hidden, not complicated, just clear. The 5 minutes ended. Tasha lowered the phone slowly. Her expression didn't change. No tears, no shaking, just stillness. Because the pain had already moved past emotion and into something else. Decision. She turned away from the door quietly. No sound, no interruption, and walked back down the hallway the same way she came. Calm, measured, like nothing had happened, but everything had changed. Tasha didn't confront them. Not that day, not the next. She didn't slam doors, didn't raise her voice, didn't even ask a single question. When Wills came back into the living room later that evening, everything looked exactly the same. She was seated on the couch, calm, composed, like she had been there the entire time. He paused for half a second when he saw her. "You're back already?" he asked, adjusting his tone quickly. Tasha looked up. "Yeah," she said simply. No tension, no emotion in her voice. Just normal. He studied her for a moment. "Thought you were leaving for the weekend," he added. She shrugged lightly. Work came up. That was it. No follow-up, no explanation. And that confused him more than anything else, because this wasn't how she reacted before. No questions, no suspicion. It didn't match what he expected. But instead of digging deeper, he accepted it, because for him, no reaction meant no problem. "Well, that works," he said casually, moving past her. "We can just stay in then." Stay in. Tasha's eyes followed him briefly, then dropped. "Yeah," she replied quietly. "We can," and just like that, the moment passed, at least for him. But for Tasha, everything had already shifted. Because silence, in moments like this, isn't weakness. It's preparation. The next few days felt different, but only if you were paying attention. From the outside, everything looked fine. Tasha moved through the house the same way. Cooked, cleaned, checked on the kids when they returned, even spoke to Wills like nothing had changed. "Dinner's ready," she called one evening. "All right," he responded. Walking in like usual, they sat across from each other. Same table, same routine, but the energy? Completely different, because Tasha wasn't trying anymore. She wasn't reaching, wasn't adjusting. She was observing, listening more than she spoke, watching more than she reacted. And that kind of shift, it's quiet, but powerful. You've been calm, Wills said one night, glancing at her between bites. Tasha looked up slowly. Is that a problem? She asked. He shrugged. No, just different. A small pause. She held his gaze for a second longer than necessary. People change, she said. He nodded, didn't think much of it, because to him, this felt like progress. No tension, no arguments. Finally, peace. But what he didn't understand was, this wasn't peace. This was distance. And distance, when it's intentional, means something is already over. Tasha stood up after dinner, cleared her plate. I'll be in the other room, she said. All right, he replied casually. No second look, no concern. And that right there confirmed everything she needed to know. Because a man who doesn't notice your silence won't notice your absence either. Monday morning came quietly. No tension, no urgency, just routine. Wills was getting ready for work, adjusting his watch, checking his phone like always. Tasha stood near the doorway for a moment, watching him. Not emotionally, not attached, just observing. Then she spoke. Hey, can I take your car today? Wills didn't even look up at first. Yeah, sure, he said casually. Keys are on the table. That easy, no questions, no hesitation. Tasha walked over, picked them up slowly. Her fingers brushed against the cold metal for a second longer than necessary. Then she nodded. Thanks. He gave a quick hum in response, already distracted. And just like that, she left. Hours passed. Wills stayed busy. Meetings, calls, decisions. By the time his phone rang later that day, he almost ignored it. But he glanced at the screen. Tasha. He answered. Yeah? There was a pause on the other end. Not long. Just enough. I crashed it. Her voice was calm, flat. Wills blinked once. What? The car, she repeated. I crashed it. Silence. Then, are you okay? He asked, but even that sounded automatic. I'm fine. Another pause. Short. All right, he said finally. It's fine. I'll just get another one. That was it. No frustration, no concern about the loss, no deeper questions. Just replacement. Like nothing mattered enough to react to. Tasha listened to that response quietly. Okay, she said, and ended the call. She lowered the phone slowly. Her expression didn't change, but something in her mind settled even deeper, because now she understood exactly how he valued things, replaceable. And that meant he wouldn't see what was coming next. That same evening, Tasha moved differently, not visibly, not in a way that raised attention. But internally, everything was precise. She sat at the dining table later that night, papers spread neatly in front of her, not random, not rushed, prepared. Every document had a purpose. Every detail had been thought through. When Wills walked in, loosening his tie, he barely glanced at the table. What's all this? He asked casually. Tasha didn't look up immediately. Just some things I need you to sign, she said calmly. He dropped his keys. What kind of things? She flipped one page lightly. Property adjustments, a few account changes, nothing complicated. He sighed slightly. Can it wait? Tasha looked up then, her eyes steady. No, it needs to be done now. A pause. Something in her tone made him stop. Not suspicious, just firm. All right, he said. Walking over, he picked up the pen, didn't read, didn't question further, just signed one paper, then another, each signature smooth, unbothered, because in his mind there was no risk, no consequence. And Tasha, she watched quietly. Every movement, every decision he made without thinking. That's it? He asked, setting the pen down. She nodded. Yeah, he didn't ask for details, didn't review anything, just walked away, like it meant nothing. But that was the mistake, because those papers, they weren't small changes, they were shifts, assets, control, ownership, and by the time he realized what he had signed, it would already be too late. Tasha gathered the documents slowly, stacked them neatly, her fingers resting on them for a brief second. Then she exhaled softly. All right. Not relief, not satisfaction, just completion. Because, step by step, she was taking everything back. The house was full, laughter, voices overlapping, music low in the background. Atlanta gatherings always felt like this. Warm, familiar. Family members moved around the space like they had done it 100 times before. Food laid out, decorations carefully placed. Everything looked right. But Tasha, she didn't feel anything. Not excitement, not curiosity, just. Still, she stepped inside slowly, dressed well, composed, and immediately, eyes turned. Tasha, you made it! Someone called out. She nodded politely. Yeah, her voice was calm, controlled. She moved through the room, greeting people lightly. Hugs, smiles, small conversations, everything expected. But her eyes? They were searching, not anxiously, just intentionally, until they landed on her, Oma, standing near the center of the room, glowing, confident, her hands resting gently on her stomach, pregnant. Tasha's gaze stayed there for a second longer than usual, not shock, because deep down, she had already suspected something. The timing, the behavior, it all pointed somewhere, and now, there it was, confirmed. Oma looked up. Their eyes met. A brief pause. Then, a smile. You came, Oma said, walking over slowly. Tasha nodded. Of course. They stood, face to face, close enough to feel the tension, but not enough for anyone else to notice. You look good, Oma added. Tasha tilted her head slightly. So do you. A small silence passed between them, heavy but hidden, because around them, everything still felt like a celebration. It didn't take long before the attention shifted fully onto Oma. People gathered around her. Compliments, excitement, questions. How far along are you? Do you know what you're having? You look amazing. Oma smiled through it all, confident, relaxed, like she was exactly where she wanted to be. Tasha stood at a distance, watching, not reacting, just observing, because this wasn't new behavior. Oma always liked attention. But today, it felt different, more deliberate. So, one of the relatives said, leaning closer, "Who's the father?" The question hung in the air. The room quieted slightly, not completely, but enough. Oma didn't answer right away. She adjusted her posture slightly, placed her hand over her stomach, then smiled. "Does it matter?" she said lightly. A few soft reactions followed. "Of course it matters," someone else added. Oma shrugged. "Let's just say..." She paused briefly. "He's someone who knows exactly what he's doing." That line. It slipped past most people, but not Tasha. Her eyes didn't move, didn't blink, because she understood exactly what that meant. Not just the words, but the intention behind them. And Oma? She knew it too. Their eyes met again, this time longer, more direct, a silent exchange that no one else in the room could read. "You'll find out eventually," Oma added, her tone casual again. The room shifted back into conversation. Laughter returned, but something underneath it had changed, because even if no one said it out loud, there was curiosity now, suspicion. And Tasha? She stood there quietly, her phone resting in her hand, not visible, not obvious, just ready. Tasha didn't argue at the baby shower. She didn't defend herself, didn't raise her voice. After everything was exposed, After the room fell into that heavy, uncomfortable silence, she simply stepped back, not rushed, not emotional, just done. Wills tried to reach for her as she turned. Tasha, wait! She didn't stop, didn't even look at him, because there was nothing left to hear. By the time she got outside, the air felt different, not lighter, not heavier, just clear. She stood there for a moment, keys in hand, then exhaled slowly. All right. That was it. No breakdown, no tears, just a quiet acknowledgement that everything had ended exactly the way it needed to. Within days, she moved, not far, still in Atlanta, but far enough to separate completely from that life. A new space, clean, intentional. Her children settled in quickly, because for them, she was still the same, present, strong, steady. And Tasha, she didn't just leave emotionally. She left strategically. Everything she had prepared, everything she had signed, now came into place. Accounts, properties, control, all aligned in her favor. Not out of revenge, but out of balance, because for the first time in a long time, she wasn't reacting. She was ahead. Wills didn't realize it immediately. At first, he was focused on damage control, calls, messages, explanations that didn't land the way he expected. But then, the notifications started. Account changes, ownership transfers, access restrictions. At first, he thought it was an error. That's not right, he muttered, scrolling through his phone. He opened another file, then another, and that's when it hit him. The papers, the ones he signed without reading. His jaw tightened slightly. Tasha, he said under his breath, not angry, not shocked, just realizing she had already moved, steps ahead. Assets that once sat under his full control, now shifted, properties no longer fully his, accounts redirected. A significant loss, one that would shake most people. But Wills? He leaned back in his chair slowly, processing, calculating. Then, he let out a small breath. It's fine. Not denial, not ignorance, confidence, because in his mind, this wasn't the end. Just a setback. Give it a few months, he said quietly to himself. I'll bounce back. And he believed that completely, because money, he knew how to make. Assets, he knew how to rebuild. What he didn't understand yet was what he had actually lost. And that couldn't be replaced. At first, Omar didn't feel anything close to regret. Even after the baby shower, even after the video, even after the looks, the whispers, the distance that slowly grew around her, she carried herself the same way, confident, unapologetic, because in her mind, she had won something, not just attention, not just a moment, something she believed Tasha had been holding on to for too long, and now she had access to it. But time has a way of changing things. Months passed, her body changed. Her routine shifted. The attention she once controlled started fading, not all at once, just gradually. Late nights turned into early mornings. Energy turned into exhaustion. And the people who once laughed with her started asking questions. Questions she didn't want to answer. So, is he involved? Someone asked quietly one afternoon. Omar paused. He's around, she replied. But her tone didn't match her words, because around wasn't the same as present. After the baby was born, everything became real. No more assumptions, no more control over how things looked. Just responsibility and silence, the kind that lingers in a room when no one is coming. She sat one evening, holding her child, staring ahead. The house quiet, too quiet. The sound slipped out softly, not frustration, not sadness exactly, just realization, because the attention she once chased didn't stay, and the man she thought she had pulled into her world was already slipping out of it. Wills didn't disappear completely, but he changed, subtly at first. Calls became shorter, less frequent, visits less consistent, and when he did show up, he wasn't the same, not focused, not engaged, the same way he had been with Tasha, now mirrored here because, for Wills, the excitement was never in staying, it was in chasing, and once something became routine, it lost its pull. "You've been distant," Omar said one day, standing near the doorway as he checked his phone. He didn't look up immediately. "I've just been busy." The same line, different situation. She crossed her arms slightly. "That's not what this is." A pause. He glanced at her briefly, then away. "You're overthinking." That landed, because she had heard that before. Not from him directly, but through Tasha. And now, she understood it differently. Because it wasn't just a response, it was a pattern. Wills stepped toward the door. "I'll call you later," he said. She didn't stop him, didn't argue, just stood there, watching, because deep down, she already knew this wasn't temporary. This was who he was, and for the first time, she wasn't on the outside looking in. She was inside it, living it, and realizing what she took was never meant to stay. It didn't happen immediately. Weeks passed, then months. 6 months, to be exact. Omar had adjusted, at least on the surface. Her baby was growing. Her routine had settled into something predictable, not easy, but manageable, until her phone rang one afternoon. She glanced at the screen, paused. Wills. She stared at it for a second longer than necessary, then answered, "Hello?" His voice came through, calm, like nothing had ever happened. "Hey." A short pause. "I need a favor." Omar frowned slightly. "A favor?" "Yeah," he said. "It's a situation." She adjusted her hold on her baby. "What kind of situation?" Another pause. Not hesitation, calculation. "My girlfriend just had twins," he said. Omar blinked. "Your what?" "Girlfriend," he repeated casually. "She's not in a position to take care of them right now." Silence. Omar's expression shifted. "And you're calling me because—" "I need someone to take care of them," he said. Temporarily, she let out a small, disbelieving breath. "You've got to be joking." "I'm serious." "You want me," she said slowly, "to take care of your girlfriend's newborn twins, while I already have my own child." "It's just for a while," he replied. Her grip tightened slightly. "No. Firm. Immediate. I'm not doing that." A pause. Then, "I'll pay you." She didn't respond right away. "Not just anything," he continued. "A lot." Still silence. "More than enough to make it worth your time." That line. It lingered, because Omar had always been drawn to one thing, opportunity. And this sounded like one. She looked down at her baby, then away. "How much?" she asked. Her tone had changed, subtly, but clearly. Wills didn't miss it. "Enough for you not to worry about anything for a long time," he said. Another pause. This one longer, because now it wasn't about difficulty, it was about decision. 3 children, one already in her arms, 2 more on the way. And still, she considered it. "You'd also cover support?" she asked. Of course. That was all she needed. She closed her eyes briefly. Then, "All right." The word came out steady. "I'll do it." Not out of care, not out of connection, but calculation. And just like that, Omar stepped into something even heavier than before. 3 children, 2 newborn twins, 1 6-month-old, and a life that no longer felt like control, but consequence, because in the end, she didn't just take something that wasn't hers. She kept taking, and now, she had to carry all of it. Tasha didn't look back, not because she wasn't hurt, not because it didn't matter, but because she finally understood something she had ignored for too long. Love without respect isn't love. Her days became quieter, not empty, not lonely, just peaceful. Mornings with her children, laughter that felt real again, moments that didn't require her to question anything. And, for the first time in a long time, She wasn't trying to hold something together. She was simply living. There were nights she sat alone, thinking, not about Wills, not about Omar, but about herself, what she accepted, what she tolerated, and why. "I should have walked away sooner," she said softly one evening, not with regret, with clarity, because now she knew her value, and more importantly, she knew her limits. No more second chances for the same behavior, no more silence to keep the peace, boundaries clear, unshakable, because when a woman truly understands her worth, she stops negotiating with disrespect. Wills rebuilt his life the only way he knew how. Fast, efficient, focused on money, and just like he said, he recovered new deals, new connections, new distractions. On the outside, it looked like nothing had changed, but inside, there was a difference, because no matter how much he replaced, nothing felt the same. Not the attention, not the excitement, and definitely not the stability he once had. Omar carried her own reality. 3 children, a life that demanded more than she expected, and the attention she once chased, gone, because attention fades, but responsibility stays. And somewhere in between all of that, the truth became clear, not loudly, not all at once, just over time, that choices have weight. And sometimes you don't feel it immediately, but eventually you carry it. So let me ask you, and I really want you to think about this. Was Tasha right? Should she have left earlier? Or did everything happen exactly the way it needed to? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your perspective. And if this story made you feel something, if it opened your eyes even a little, go ahead and subscribe to Alex Romance and Divorce Stories. Because stories like this, they don't just tell you what happened. They show you what to avoid. Because stories like this, they don't just tell you what happened. They show you what to avoid.
Thank you for watching. See you next time.